What up, everyone, and welcome back to the Top Cut Academy. I am Professor Benji, and it is my absolute pleasure to be bringing you another video today on our channel. As you can see by the title, we're going to be taking a look at LAIC, our first international championships of the season, and the end of the Mega Evolution metagame. LAIC marks the end of the Mega Evolution base set. We are now moving into Phantasmal Flames format. I think that Mega Evolution has been quite a trailblazing meta, as will be highlighted in this video. I think there's been a lot of diversity. I think there's been an awful lot of creativity as well, and sort of a mixture of top decks. The meta has shifted quite nicely from tournament to tournament. We've not seen the same deck winning over and over again, or even making top eights over and over again. There's been a bit of variation in top eights as well. As much as we're not going to go into every tournament, as that would make the video far too long, we're going to do a nice little short summary of everything here. But first, I wanted to look at LAIC, and let's get into that straight away. So, heading into LAIC, I made a video on my top 10 decks. You can see those right here. Gardevoir first, Mega Absol second, Goldengo third, Dragapult fourth, Terrabox fifth, Charizard Pidgeot sixth, Marnie's Grimmsnarl seventh, Enzarowak eighth, Ceruledge 9, and Flareon Box 10th. Now, obviously, if you want to go back and see my point of view as to why I put any of those things there, then of course you can. But I think that the most important thing to highlight is definitely the top three decks here. Now, I did say that I have for a long time believed that Gardevoir is whatever variant it might be, because I think that Gardevoir has the ability to change and adapt to whatever the meta seems to want to throw at it, whether you need to be more aggressive with sort of the Bravery Charms Drifloon build, or you want to be a bit more disruptive with the Jellicent build and slow down those Goldengos or item use decks. But I think that Gardevoir as a whole, when you group it together, is a very adaptable card, and the stage 2 can just sort of funnel into whatever it needs to. So I've sort of grouped it as a whole here, as I think that Gardevoir Jelly was always going to do well after its previous results. But I do think that, as we did see, just sort of the straight Guardy, as we'll call it, did also do quite well. But then coming into Mega Absol, when you have a deck created by the arguably best player in the game, it not only sort of morphs the meta around that, but it shows the deck does have legs. If the best player in the world has come up with it and has continued to perform with it, then you know that the deck is worth playing. After a first place finish at Las Vegas, I knew that Mega Absol would not only be counted, but would also be played more. And I think that when a powerful deck like this gets played by good pilots, confident pilots, it will always do well. And I think that that is why I put it second. And of course, I said Goldengo rocks. I think that in the video, I said that any of these three decks are pretty much interchangeable. I think Mega Absol is the one that could fall out of the top three in the future. But I think that Goldengo and Gardevoir are both pretty firmly top tier decks. Excuse me. Pretty clearly top tier decks. I think that both of them have the ability to not only become better, as a Gardevoir definitely does in Phantasmal Flames, but to continue to get good results and win more regional or international events in the future. And so I do think that sort of the Goldengo and the Gardevoir were sort of interchangeable. Any of them sort of on their day could become the best deck to play. However, I do think top three in this order were the right way to go around for this weekend. And of course, I don't want to say I was proved right, but Gardevoir did end up winning the event. It was a mirror match in the final, actually. So that sort of highlighted the fact that Gardevoir, when the big players come out to play, when the best players in the world come out to play at something like a large international event, then you're going to see Guardy rise to the top. The best players playing the best deck equals, well, oftentimes first place. But let's jump into a little breakdown. I just sort of did this to give you a little bit more of a a distinct view of what actually did well. So I've broken it down into top 32. I think the top 32 is a great way to sort of look at the highest performing decks. Lots of these decks sort of bubbled out or drew in the last round of the asymmetrical cut, which at LAIC for the first time, the asymmetrical actually didn't go asymmetrical and cut very cleanly straight into a top 8, which was quite nice. So, as you can see here, we had 10 different decks in top 32, but only 4 in top 8, so that really broke away. And as you can see here, we had Gardevoir Jellicent, there were 2 in top 8, 7 top 32, Gardevoir EX, 3 in top 32, 0 in top 8, Mega Absol Box, 9 in top 32, 2 in top 8, Goldengo Rocks, there were 4 in top 32 and a number 3 in top 8. So 3/4 of Goldengo decks in top 32 actually made the cut into top 8. And then Dragapult Dusknoir, 2 in top 32 and 1 in top 8. And then there is a smaller breakdown, obviously, of some less popular decks in Zoroark, Flareon, Joltik, Terrabox, and Dragapult Charizard. That one definitely a surprise for me, but none of those actually making top 8, but showing their worth in the top 32. I think that Zoroark is a deck that continues to be underappreciated, maybe due to the high skill cap needed to play the deck, or maybe it's sort of an aggressive mana, sort of needing to play around with damage, needing to almost attack in multiple different spots, different places, and attack with the right thing at the right time, meaning that you're not able to sort of be aggressive and take knockouts on turns where you feel they're available, unlike some of these decks above it that can be a little bit more aggressive and take prizes. So I think that Zoroark may be something that gets played more in the future with the new Zekrom that has been announced, but for now, just floating in with another good finish, but not all that popular in top 32. But the reason I wanted to highlight this is that I've actually taken, excuse the horrible white, they were actually, there is a reason this is different to the last one, is because here, as you can see, there are 10 different decks in top 32. Well, if we take our first regional in Milwaukee, the top 32 diversity had 14 different decks and 7 different decks in top cut. Now, as you can see, compared to only 4 in top 8 here, we had a top 11 at this event, I believe, and there were 7 different decks. So you can, you know, 11, 7, it is a little bit more than half, obviously, but you can sort of see again that there is a good diversity, even though 7 seems like a much higher number of different decks. When this actually breaks into a top 8, that is 50% of the decks, and this is slightly more than 50%. So the format has sort of remained quite diverse. It has narrowed just a little bit. I think that the reason it will also narrow is because at those international events, people are far less likely to take risks and maybe take something that is tried, tested, and true, not sort of wanting to make the journey all the way to Sao Paulo for those who are traveling a long way, especially some of those European or Asian players who would have got on very long flights over to South America. So yeah, they might want to play something a little bit more safe, and therefore you get a little bit less diversity. It's hard to say as to why, but we have seen a little bit of a narrowing in the top cut towards the end of the format. However, as you can see, a really, really diverse format right the way through. I think that Black Bolt and White Flare had nothing of the sort. I think that it was much more narrow in that format. So I think overall we've had a very awe-inspiring format that has allowed for a lot of diversity. But the way I really wanted to highlight that diversity is to do this little cool thing that I made here. So we had 7 tournaments that were played in the Mega Evolution base set format. There were 6 regionals and 1 international, LAIC, with 6 different winning decks. There was only 1 repeat winner and players from 6 different countries, and there was only 1 repeat country, and that country was actually Brazil. We had Gustavo Wada win the first event, and I won't spoil who won LAIC just for those who haven't seen it. So if you don't want to see the winner of LAIC, I suggest you skip the last slide of this little circle Pokeball that I've made at the bottom, but I will cover it, of course. But, of course, our Mega Evolution format started with Charizard Pidgeot getting the win at Milwaukee Regional Championships, piloted by Jackson Ford. And I think that this was sort of the peak of Charizard Pidgeot. It did have some more success, some more top 8s, and some decent finishes. But I think coming into the format, everyone was very sort of keen on how strong Charizard Pidgeot was. But maybe as the format developed, Absol came in a little bit more. I think Goldengo started to find ways to actually beat Charizard, making it a little bit more of a how can I say? I don't ever want to say an auto win, but obviously Charizard previously was very confident in Goldengo, but that fell away as Goldengo was able to find ways to win. And I even highlighted after Las Vegas that it had a negative win percentage into Goldengo at that tournament, showing that they really had sort of figured out a way using Solrock's Lunatones and maybe a little bit, a few more tech cards, should I say, in order to get around this deck. So that is where we started, Charizard, Pidgeot. And then on to the next place, we had Gardevoir EX, the straight version, or should I say the Mega Gardevoir version, piloted by a name that should be known to all in Gustavo Wada. Really fantastic to see him return to the scene after a short while off, beating Gabriel Fernandez in the final, the old guard versus the new guard, and the old guard takes it away this time. But I'm sure that is a matchup we're going to be seeing in South America for a long time to come. So yeah, it was really cool. Gardevoir allowing Charizard to take the first regional and let the Dark types rule ahead. However, quickly taking the title back on the same weekend as Belo Horizonte finished, and Gardevoir back on top with a win. And then following that was the biggest shock and awe, I think, for everyone. I think that lots of people, including myself, had really sort of written Dragapult off with the release of Psyduck, with a lot of Guardy going around and stuff like that. I think that lots of people were expecting Dragapult to continue to be sort of a mid-range deck, taking good matchups against some of the smaller, less played decks that are a little bit less powerful. Of course, when you're playing two absolutely phenomenal cards such as Dragapult EX and Dusknoir, you are able to beat some of those middling decks. However, we were all proved wrong by Alexander Rutowicz and, of course, Alberto Conti, as this was a mirror match in the final as well. So two Dragapults in the final of Lille. And that really shook the meta up for Gdansk. Obviously, I went to both of these events. I think going into Lille, there was a lot of talk about everyone sort of covering themselves for Dragapult, as Europe is sort of more well known for Dragapult over Gardevoir. I think that America more Gardevoir than Dragapult. And so I think that everyone came teched up, but it wasn't enough for this weekend. And Alexander was able to take it down, but it meant that going into Gdansk, everyone doubled up on their Psyducks, everyone doubled up on their E-Hammers and their jamming towers to make sure there were no crystals, no Neo Upper energies, and no damage counters being sprinkled by Dusknoir, and some people even going a step further and putting mist energies in their deck as well to stop that Dragapult from sprinkling. So really trying to shut down Dragapult, and although it had another decent tournament, our next winner in Gdansk was actually Daniel Magda piloting Goldengo Rocks. And I think up until this point, Goldengo had some quite impressive results, but I don't think it had sort of hit the heights that everyone assumed it would. I think this deck has obviously been at the top tiers of the format for a long time now, but definitely sitting right at the top in Mega Evolution format, especially towards the end. But I think this is sort of where Daniel Magda showed that into a poor matchup, such as the Flareon matchup in the final, he was able to find a way around being hit for weakness and using those rocks to his advantage in an absolutely fantastic way. And I think more people were coming up with better tech cards, such as Mawile, to get around the cornerstone as well. So people sort of getting awe-inspired and a little bit more confident in the Goldengo deck, and Daniel Magda actually taking down this against a poor matchup as well, with Emma Hagen in the final with Flareon box. And I think this sort of put Goldengo back on the map for the final two tournaments of this format, as it started to pick up not only really, really decent results, but some really, really highlight performances on stream as well, really highlighting the deck strengths. But next, we move on to two events, and this is our repeat deck. It is Mega Absol Box. It won two events, Brisbane Regional Championships won by Ryuki Okada, a name that I'm sure is known to most in the community, a name that has really risen to the top in the last couple of years as well. Some fantastic performances, and one of the Japanese players who travels an awful lot, goes to a lot of events, and continues to perform well at all of them. But of course, Las Vegas Regionals is probably the win that is most deserved by Tord Reklev, not only because Tord continues to show that he is one of the best players in the world, arguably the best player in the world, but the designer of this Mega Absol deck, someone who created it from the start. He took it to Milwaukee Regionals, saying that he wanted to play it. He sort of put that down a little bit then when he was playing in Europe, thinking that people had sort of hard countered it, moved around it. And then, of course, the genius that he is, he thought that everyone had moved off of some of those counters to the cornerstone and everything else and jumped straight back on the deck. Very, very similar to his original 60. Took it to Las Vegas, and boy, did the casinos pay out. He hit the jackpot on the weekend and got our first deck that had 2 wins. The funniest part about this, though, is if you actually go and check, both of these tournaments happened on the same weekend. So Mega Absol, a really, really, really strong performance right before LAIC. So I think that lots of people going into LAIC, myself included, were once again either looking to play Mega Absol or alternatively hard counter it. So it sort of made that same sort of scenario that we had after Tord had come up with the first time at Milwaukee, to where you could be on either side of the fence, and that is a difficult call to make, whether you're going to go and play the deck that just won and do a really good job, or are you going to be cancelled out by all of those people out to get you? So Mega Absol, our first repeat winner. And then finally, LAIC, the weekend just gone. What we are here to highlight was won by Gardevoir Jellison and by Pedro Patusi. For those who didn't want to see that, it is too late. It is on the screen, and Gardevoir Jelly wins. The final was, now I'm not here to comment on any controversy that happened in the game, but originally the final was going to be Gardevoir Jellison against Charizard Pidgeot, piloted by Gabriel Fernandez. So obviously lots of people expecting Charizard to pick up its second win of the format, as it can be quite a good matchup for the deck. However, there was some sort of controversy, and Gabriel was not able to play the final, and therefore it was passed down to the next person, who was also playing Gardevoir Jellison. And so it was a Brazilian, an all Brazilian final, all Gardevoir Jellison final, which I think is really fantastic to see. The Brazil came out and really showed its strength going into this season. They have won their own IC, and hopefully we can see the same, and the UK can take home London as well in the next couple of months. But yeah, I think that Guardy Jelly, as I said before in the top 10 video, in a really, really strong position. I think that I had good matchups all around the board, and the best players in the world were traveling to that tournament with the best deck. And therefore, someone like Henry Chow, someone like Pedro Patusi were able to come out on top just using the best deck at the highest and most played tournament of the year, and able to take it down altogether. And that is all. I just want to do a quick summary of the format. I think that it's been really, really good. I am now really looking forward to Phantasmal Flames. I've already started testing some things. I think that currently I am sticking with Flareon Box, as I have picked up quite a lot of points over the last sort of week or two since coming back from the regional events with it. But I think that more importantly, I want to sort of stick to something and learn it inside and out, ready for Birmingham and London. I want a really strong showing at both of those at some home events. But I do think that I will be covering some decks that I am working on the side. I just want to give a shout out right now to Mega Sharpedo. I don't think the card is necessarily good, but one of my favourite Megas. So that is something that I'm going to be actively working on in a couple of videos to see if we can come up with something cool that is fun to play, and hopefully competitively viable, although I don't quite think so. But thank you very, very much for tuning in to the Top Cut Academy. I hope you enjoyed this video and the little summary of the format we've just had and our winners. Congratulations to everyone who took home their prizes and have already signed their ticket to Worlds, and hopefully I will see you there. See you next time.